What happens when two coworkers who can barely stand each other become the only survivors of a plane crash? Welcome back for another English movie review lesson. I'm Teacher Teddy, and today, let's talk about Send Help. The story begins by introducing Linda Liddle, a hardworking, socially awkward analyst who is passed over for a promotion she was practically promised. Linda spends most of her working life inside a small, windowless office on the third floor of the company's headquarters, quietly doing excellent work that rarely gets acknowledged by anyone above her. She works in that office every single day, but only occasionally gets invited to meetings on the top floor, where the real decisions actually happen. Notice in the office versus on the top floor. In for the enclosed room itself, on for a whole floor of the building, just one of the many surfaces prepositions can describe. Linda has worked at the company for years, always arriving early in the morning and staying late in the evening. Notice in the morning and in the evening. We use in for longer, more general parts of the day. The company's late founder had specifically wanted Linda promoted to vice president, but his son, Bradley, the company's new young CEO, instead gives the job to a former college friend of his. The decision is made at a company meeting on a Friday afternoon, in front of the entire office. At a meeting, on a Friday. Notice how these prepositions each do a slightly different job of describing time and place in the very same sentence. Shortly afterward, Linda and Bradley end up on the same small private plane together for a work trip, which then crashes, leaving the two of them as the only survivors, stranded on a remote, deserted island. They wake up on the beach, surrounded by wreckage from the crash. On the beach. We use on for surfaces, like beaches, floors, or islands themselves, not in or at. With no rescue in sight, Linda and Bradley are forced to work together simply to survive, even though years of resentment between them make that cooperation extremely difficult. They build a small fire on the sand near the tree line, using dry branches gathered earlier in the day, and take turns keeping watch through the night, in case the flames go out. On the sand. In the day. And through the night. Each show a different preposition working correctly with a different kind of noun. A surface, a general time period, and a duration, respectively. Finding fresh water becomes an urgent priority too, and the pair eventually discover a small freshwater stream running through a rocky ravine at the far end of the island, roughly an hour's walk from their original crash site. They agree to meet back at the fire every evening before it gets fully dark. A simple rule that quickly becomes essential once they start exploring different parts of the island separately during the day. At the fire pinpoints one exact, agreed meeting spot, while during the day describes a longer, more general stretch of time. At night, tensions between them grow worse, especially once old grievances about the missed promotion resurface. At night. We use at for specific points in the 24-hour clock, and also for this particular time of day expression, as an exception worth remembering. As the days pass, the film shifts unpredictably between dark comedy and genuine horror, particularly once it becomes clear the island itself may not be as empty or as safe as it first appeared. Something dangerous is hiding in the dense jungle at the center of the island. In the jungle, we use in for enclosed or three-dimensional spaces, unlike the open surface of on the beach. Bradley, forced entirely out of his comfortable position of power for the first time in his life, has to rely completely on Linda's competence and resourcefulness just to stay alive. At one particularly tense moment, Bradley admits, for the first time in his life, that he has no real idea what he's doing. At one moment, pinpoints an exact instant in time, in much the same way at night or at a specific hour would. By day 3, their survival depends entirely on decisions made at a moment's notice. At a moment's notice, another fixed expression using at, meaning immediately, without any time to prepare. Without spoiling exactly how things unfold, the balance of power between the two characters shifts dramatically over the course of the film, in ways that mirror, and then deliberately subvert, their original office relationship. The final act takes place on the same island, but at a completely different location from where they first crashed. On the island versus at a location. The same word, on, works at the larger scale of the island itself, while at narrows down to one specific point within it. Late at night, under a sky full of unfamiliar stars, the two of them finally talk honestly about the promotion for the first time since the crash. Late at night combines two prepositions of time into a single natural phrase, exactly the kind of pairing that appears constantly in everyday spoken English. Now, let's talk about how this story is told. And the most obvious comparison here is Castaway, the 2000 Tom Hanks film about a man stranded alone on a deserted island after a plane crash. Critics have made this comparison often, since the setup is almost identical. But where Castaway plays its premise as a serious, meditative drama about isolation, Send Help takes exactly the same basic scenario and turns it into something far darker and stranger, mixing real tension with sharp, uncomfortable comedy. You can see Sam Raimi's own horror background clearly in how he stages the island's dangers, giving a familiar survival premise a genuinely unpredictable new tone. That contrast is really what critics keep coming back to. Castaway is a quiet character study built around solitude, while Send Help is a two-hander built around conflict, forcing its leads to keep talking, arguing, and negotiating with each other, rather than simply enduring silence. This episode also has 5 bonus vocabulary words to review, pulled from how critics have actually described this film. Our first word is unpredictable. Unpredictable describes something that constantly changes direction in ways you can't easily guess in advance. Critics repeatedly praised how unpredictable the film's tone is from scene to scene. Our second word is visceral. Visceral describes something that produces a strong, immediate physical or emotional reaction, rather than a purely intellectual one. The film's survival sequences have been described as genuinely visceral. Our third word is audacious. Audacious describes something bold, daring, and willing to take real creative risks. Mixing horror and workplace comedy this directly has been called an audacious choice by several reviewers. Our fourth word is gonzo. Gonzo describes a wild, exaggerated, highly personal style that breaks from conventional restraint. One review specifically called the film a gonzo return to form for its director. Our fifth and final word is unhinged. Unhinged describes behavior or a tone that feels wildly out of control in an intense or extreme way. Several of the film's later scenes have been described as gleefully unhinged. Now, let's talk about how Send Help has actually been received since its release. Critically, the response has been remarkably strong. Reviews have placed it among the highest-rated films of its director's entire career, with a critic score in the low to mid-90s on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences responded just as enthusiastically, with reports of one of the strongest audience scores recorded for a film in this genre in decades, alongside a solid box office return of $94 million against a modest $40 million budget. Much of the online discussion focuses on exactly how the film blends genres so confidently. Critics and audiences alike have praised how it moves between dark, workplace satire, genuine survival tension, and outright horror, often within the same scene, without the tonal shifts feeling careless or accidental. The lead performances have also driven plenty of conversation, with both lead actors praised for fully committing to the material's more extreme moments, rather than playing it safe with a more restrained, conventional approach. Several critics have also pointed out how unusual it is for a mainstream studio release to blend office satire this directly with survival horror, arguing that the combination could easily have felt disjointed in less confident hands. Online, discussion of the film today tends to focus on a few recurring topics: how it compares to more traditional survival dramas like Castaway, whether its office politics setup actually works as satire, and where it ranks among its director's wider body of genre filmmaking. Let's go through prepositions of time and place from this episode. Use in for longer or enclosed spaces and time periods. In the morning. In the jungle. In the evening. Use on for surfaces and for days and dates. On the beach. On the island. On a Friday afternoon. Use at for specific points in time, specific locations, and a handful of fixed expressions. At night. At a company meeting. At a moment's notice. A useful way to remember the difference between in and on for places: in is for something surrounded or enclosed, like a jungle or a room, while on is for something you'd stand on top of, like a beach, a floor, or an island. One more useful pairing worth remembering: use in for cities, countries, and large enclosed areas, on for streets, coastlines, and any kind of flat surface, and at for exact addresses, buildings, or events. She works in the city, on a busy street, at a small design company. Uses all three correctly within a single, natural-sounding sentence. Try describing where you are right now and what time it is, using at least one example, each of in, on, and at. Let's also go through our 5 bonus vocabulary words from this episode. Unpredictable. Constantly changing direction in ways you can't easily guess. The film's tone is genuinely unpredictable. Visceral. Producing a strong, immediate physical or emotional reaction. The survival scenes feel visceral and intense. Audacious. Bold, daring, and willing to take real creative risks. Mixing genres this directly is an audacious choice. Gonzo. A wild, exaggerated, highly personal style breaking from convention. One review called it a gonzo return to form. Unhinged. Behavior or tone that feels wildly out of control. Some later scenes are gleefully unhinged. Try using one of these 5 words yourself, either to describe this film or another genre-blending film you know. So, what's the final verdict on Send Help? It's a genuinely confident piece of genre filmmaking, taking a familiar survival premise and pushing it somewhere far stranger and darker than expected. Backed by 2 lead performances willing to fully commit to that shift. It's easily one of its director's most acclaimed films in years. If you enjoy stories that mix real tension with sharp, uncomfortable comedy, and you don't mind a film that refuses to settle into just one genre, this is well worth your time. Just go in expecting something considerably darker than a typical desert island survival story. Did you enjoy Send Help? Let me know in the comments on the video, or get in touch. If this helped you improve your English today, subscribe on YouTube, or follow along on Spotify or Apple Podcasts for more movies reviewed in slow, clear English. Interactive learning materials for this lesson can be found for free on engmoviereviews.com.